888,888 blocks. That's a tough one. Took me a couple takes to get that one right. Anyways, historic day on the 88 Sats radio channel. 6/8 since January the 3rd, 2009. There has been, do I try it again? 888,888 blocks mined. So we're going to be talking about that today. I really wanted to do a live stream to commemorate this event, but too much going on right now in my life, and it's not going to happen until about 4 a.m. my time. So I figured this was the next best thing. I will be posting this probably early Saturday morning, and by that time, this moment has come and gone, just like a lot of things. But I'll bring this up on the screen for everybody. We're currently at 888,833 blocks. Oh, the computer's thinking pretty hard right now. I feel you. I feel you, computer. So Luxor was the winner of that block. We're ahead of schedule. I thought I was going to maybe get to do an early morning live stream tomorrow to celebrate, but this is going to have to do. So I'm going to be talking about a couple different things here. I got 4 or 5 things I want to talk about within the block height, the relevance, significance, different things. I don't know, just interesting to me. Different things to think about when we're thinking about the block height. I think we should start with the first one, because we know here that Bitcoin itself kind of has its own clock. That's what the block height is. Every 10 minutes on average, a new block gets mined. Sometimes it takes 60 minutes. Sometimes it takes 1 minute back to back. But on average, the beauty of this Bitcoin network is that it's supposed to be every 10 minutes. And the reason for that is so that the network can come to a consensus to make sure all the transactions that were put into that block were indeed valid transactions. And that's something that differentiates Bitcoin from other cryptocurrencies, is that consensus, is the difficulty adjustment and the 10 minutes between blocks. Some of the other blockchains like Solana, Ethereum, Cardano, XRP, I mean, XRP's missing a couple, what was it, 30,000 blocks? So pretty big red flag there. But aside from that, the blocks, because there's no difficulty adjustment, because there's no proof of work, the blocks come in way too fast. And when they come in way too fast, the network can't agree on things. And when the network can't agree on things, that creates major problems. That's why we've seen some of these blockchains go down in the past, like Solana. Just look it up yourself, Google or Perplexity or whatever you use to find information now. How many times has the Solana blockchain gone down? And it's because the blocks come in too fast. With this one, with the block height, every 10 minutes, a new block is added and the network comes to a consensus and moves on to the next one. So with that, when we're talking about time, when we're talking about the clock within Bitcoin here, I want you to just think for a second how much different the world would be if we actually used something similar to this for our time. There would be no time zones. There would be no seconds. There would just be block heights. And when I think about that, I think of a scenario where you're meeting somebody. And this was kind of what life was like before cell phones. You'd meet somebody at a certain time, certain place. If they weren't there, you weren't immediately on your phone texting because you're worried about the next thing that you had to get to and the next thing after that. It was just kind of like, yeah, I'll meet you sometime around this time at this place. Good enough. And when we think back at both those times, we hear people say, like our grandparents and our great-grandparents said, you know, life used to be a lot slower. Why? What does that mean? Life used to be a lot slower. It's because our days are so jam-packed. We have a 10:15 meeting and then a 10:30 meeting, and we don't really get to connect with each other because we're always on to the next thing. And why is that the case? Because of our dollar system, because of our broken monetary system. Because we can't keep up. We can't keep up to the money printer. We have to work harder and harder and harder to just barely get by. And when you're in that sort of an environment, when you're looking at seconds and you're stressed out, think about what kind of impact that has on your life and your stress and your overall mental health. So if we had, just as a thought experiment here, if our time was block height and you said, I'm going to meet you at this bench or this station or this arena or wherever, At block height, 888,890. And then if you're 10 minutes early, who cares? Just sit and enjoy things. You don't have to. I just feel like it would be a lot less stressful for everybody. We would shift away from the very high time preference that we currently live in, the very stressful, anxious state, always chasing the next thing, to a more relaxed and slow. And somewhere around this time would be great. And just kind of, again, think about the impact that would have on your mental health if we lived in a world where our dollar wasn't being devalued every single day, and we could actually add value to the world and retain that value and not worry about the next thing coming. How many days have you spent like one meeting, two meetings, three meetings, and then it's just like, where did the day go? And then it's the next day. It's just, I don't think that's how we were supposed to live. And I think if we slowed time down, I know it's kind of a crazy concept, slow time down. And it wouldn't like, it's kind of hard to explain this because it is so much different. Just like everything in Bitcoin, it's so much different than what we're used to. It wouldn't actually slow time down. It would just change our perception of time. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. And imagine a world where your dollar was actually able to retain its value and you didn't have to go to all those meetings. You could actually just sit there and enjoy yourself. And even if whoever you were meeting at this certain time wasn't there for 20 minutes, that's okay. Imagine that. And I want you to imagine that because it's going to happen. Basically, what we're living through right now is we're moving on to a Bitcoin standard, whether people are willing to admit that or not. That's what's happening. And we've seen in the last couple of days, this is kind of a side road on this whole thought here, but we've seen the government within the United States not just say that they're going to start buying Bitcoin. They said that this is the biggest thing in human history or modern history. They said they're going to buy as much as they possibly can, and it's not going to be an added expense to the taxpayer. The most influential country on the planet is saying that. So we're moving to a Bitcoin standard, whether everybody understands it or not, or everybody wants it to happen or not. We're moving in that direction. And I think about 1971. And I think about at that time when people turned on their TVs and watched President Nixon announce that they're going to be moving the US off of the gold standard into petrodollar, petro reserves. Most people probably didn't know what the heck that meant. Most people probably didn't even see it. If you think about how things work today and how much access to information that we have and how many people still are missing like the main plot of this thing happening, I have no doubt that the majority of people had no idea that that happened and definitely didn't have any idea about the implications of what would come from that. 50 years later, we can see the implications of taking the money off of a real scarce, hard asset like gold. So when we think about that, that happened, took 50 years, but we've seen the implications of that. So I think we're actually moving in the opposite direction now. We're going to move to a Bitcoin standard. And I think that just like then, there's not a whole lot of people paying attention to what Trump is saying, what Bo Hines is saying, what Senator Lummis is saying, what Howard Lutnick is saying. It's all the same message, and not a lot of people are paying attention. So I think that they're just going to slowly notice their life get better and better and better. They might not know that it's because of Bitcoin, but that's absolutely the reason why life is going to get better. So again, going back to the time preference there and to the block height, think about what life would be like because that's what's coming. And that's going to be a fraction of the improvement to our society, our way of life, and everything that happens because of Bitcoin. So that's the first one, time preference. The second one here is that it's been 16 years since January 3rd, 2009, 888,000 blocks. It's pretty impressive. Early on, there was a couple of issues within the Bitcoin network. They were fixed almost instantly, I think. I'm not a Bitcoin historian. I don't claim to be. But since then, like this thing's just been chugging along. And to me, it's very impressive, the fact that nobody is like in control of this thing, yet it's still working. And when you really think hard about that, like that's how it's almost perfect. The whole point of Bitcoin is to remove power and influence and control from the centralized authorities like the central banks. We've been in that system for 100 years. It's obviously not going very well. I think most would agree with that. But just imagine a system that kind of runs on its own without any sort of ability to change it. There's no, the incentives are aligned and nobody has the ability to change that. It's a pretty big deal. Every 10 minutes, there's a new block, regardless of what's going on in this country, what this person said, what Jerome Powell said. It doesn't matter. Bitcoin is just a protocol. Every 10 minutes, a new block is created, and those transactions are there forever. You can't go back and change it. It's immutable, it's unstoppable, and it's extremely impressive. And so when we think about that, somebody asked on the show that we did today on the stream for Maple Bitcoin, somebody asked, is it possible that whoever created Bitcoin could flip a switch and turn it off? And I think a lot of people, because they aren't familiar with Bitcoin and how the whole thing works, how layer one works and how the network, the difficulty adjustment, how it all kind of ties together and how magical it is. They think that somebody has the ability to just shut this thing off. And you can't. And that's why I think we have such a negative, a lot of people have such a negative lens around Bitcoin, is because we've had 16 years of negative marketing against Bitcoin because you can't stop it. And the central banks, the governments, the people who control the media, they understand, I think, that they can't stop Bitcoin. So their only move here is just to throw as much as they can at it as possible. But the moral of the story there is that it cannot be stopped. Even if they shut off the internet on planet Earth, Bitcoin would still go on, because there's actually at least one satellite up there who has a copy of all the transactions, a node running in outer space, keeping track, just in case things ever go south down here on Earth. We still have the maintained blockchain of every single transaction that has happened since January 3rd, 2009. And to me, that is very impressive. The next one here is goals. I made a video about this a little while ago, but I think it's worth revisiting here. The block height to me represents a chunk of time that people should be more focused on. Most people, they go January, February, they have all these goals, all these ambitions. And by the time they get to April, May, June, they kind of forget about it. Then it's Christmas time. And then they're disappointed that they didn't hit any of their goals because a year happens so fast. So there's a quote that says people overestimate the amount of things they can do in a day and underestimate the amount of things they can do in a year. But I think that's even too short-term thinking, too much of a high time preference. I think the quote should be, people overestimate how much they can do in 1 year and underestimate how much they can accomplish in 4 years or one Bitcoin cycle. So every 210,000 blocks, I believe it is, there's a new cycle. So I think that that's what people should be more focused on in their life, is actually setting a direction, giving yourself a reasonable amount of time, in this case being 4 years, a full Bitcoin halving cycle, 210,000 blocks, and just doing it. Give yourself more time. Nothing ever happens in a year. Nothing worthwhile happens in a year. Things take time. And I think there's no better example of that than Bitcoin itself, with the proof of work. Everything good in life requires work. It requires energy, and it should be taken over a very long time horizon. We're just so used to this world where we just expect things to happen instantly. Everything's just like this nowadays. And I think we need to change back to thinking longer term. So I think that if you start setting your goals, setting your direction, and you give yourself 4 years, or in this case, with the theme of this, 210,000 blocks, I think you're going to be surprised what you can accomplish in 4 years or 210. See, I would say that I'm closer to like this side of the scale in terms of living in more of a block height world versus man-constructed time. But it's still in my head. When you've gone through 35 years or 30 years in that old world, it's very hard to unscrew that. So the point of that is that every 210,000 blocks, that's what we should be focused on. That's what we should be working towards. And when I think back to 210,000 blocks ago, for me, I was working as an accountant. I was in a different city. I didn't have a dog. I hardly had any Bitcoin. And when I think how much has changed in 4 years, I think that if you allow yourself, if you are consistent enough and you understand that it takes work, it takes time, then you can accomplish so much more instead of just chasing the next thing. And it kind of all ties in with this whole time preference thing. So that's the next one was goals. And then finally, if you think about this, think about what year is it? 2025 years ago. Think about what happened and think about how we've recorded time since then. Think about how much history has changed since then. And there's a quote that Michael Saylor said that really stuck with me. And he said, there's going to come a point in time here where everything before Bitcoin is considered to be bullshit. Think about that. There's going to come a point where everything before Bitcoin is considered to be bullshit. So we know BC, before Christ. I think there's going to be a new time when we look back. It might take hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years before this kind of sinks in. But I think it's going to be after Bitcoin. And I'm not saying that Bitcoin is a religion. I'm not saying Bitcoin is Jesus Christ or Satoshi's Jesus Christ. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that before Bitcoin, we couldn't actually verify anything that had happened in human history before. And I just want you to think about how different our lives would be today if we knew what history was, if we didn't have anything hidden from us, if we knew the truth of everything that was discovered hundreds of thousands of years ago. If we had access to all that information, how different would our lives be right now? I mean, just even thinking on a very small scale, 100 years, 1913 is when the Federal Reserve was created. And ever since then, we've been living in a complete illusion, essentially. A lot of things have been hidden from us. A lot of technology has been hidden from us. A lot of cures have been hidden from us. Just imagine, it's actually almost sickening to think about. But the good news is, and the point of this is that they can't change it anymore. They can't rewrite history. They can't hide things anymore. Once something is put into the blockchain, the Bitcoin layer 1 time chain, I guess we should say, it's there forever. There's 25,000 people right now. It's going to be exponentially higher in a decade from now. But 25,000 people around the world have a copy of this, the transactions and what's inscribed within those transactions. So there's a lot of hype, obviously, around the store of value aspect of Bitcoin, the currency aspect of Bitcoin, the technology around Bitcoin. But I don't think there's enough focus on the fact that once something is there, nobody can change that. We've never been able to do that before. They wrote things in stone. They wrote books. They burned libraries. They hid information from us. They can no longer do that. And that changes every single aspect of society going forward. I can't even comprehend how massive that is for humanity. The fact that you can't go back and change history, the fact that you can't hide things, manipulate things. It blows my mind to think about how far ahead we would be if we had something like Bitcoin before. But again, the world wasn't ready for Bitcoin. It wasn't. 2009, in my opinion, was the earliest that Bitcoin could have been released to the world or discovered, whatever you want to call it. Whenever the white paper was introduced, there was 50 years of progression and input and work within Bitcoin that led to that. But Bitcoin wouldn't have worked without the internet and the speed that we have with the internet now. So as depressing as it is to think about what could have been, it gives me a lot of hope to think that we're never going back to that world now. And that's a very hard realization for a lot of people, depending on what industry you're in, depending on what you're invested in. But we're never going back to that world. We just can't. Regardless of what I say, what I do, what you think, what you do, what Donald Trump says, what whoever the hell our prime minister in Canada says, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. It cannot be changed. It's immutable. It's unstoppable. It's extremely impressive. And it's worth celebrating. So cheers to the first 888,888 blocks. We still got about 52 more blocks before that, but anyways, you take what you can get sometimes, as my good friend Kip Moore would say. This is the closest we could do. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. So I guess just to give a small update without getting too personal on here, or getting too emotional. But I had the week off. I wasn't on a vacation or anything. We're dealing with a few family issues right now. My mom has been struggling a little bit. She had a surgery and a few complications with that surgery. So that's where I've been. I'm hoping to be back a little bit next week. I'm either heading into the city tonight or tomorrow morning. But anyways, I would just appreciate, if nothing else, just send some good energy, some good vibes this way. And I've received a ton from the community so far. And I just want to say thanks to everybody. I haven't had a chance to respond to all of them, but it means the world to me, truly. So thank you. And I hope to see everybody really soon here. Bye-bye.